So the day's finally arrived, and it's funny. When stuff like this comes along, the occasion of a goodbye for a character, you'd have a lot of feelings depending on the character or the story that's being wrapped up. And it is also funny and kind of ironic that this era began for Doctor Who roughly around the same time we started our podcast together. So in a way, this is almost like almost a part of a concluding chapter for Grey Owl as well, at least when it comes to our association with Doctor Who.
Yeah. Did we do a review of the first episode?
We did. We did what was originally a one-off episode, which we called First Impressions, where it was just us reacting to the pilot episode for Series 11, and then we did end up doing like a full series review like later on.
Yeah.
That feels like a lifetime ago.
Well, I think season 11 was the actually only Jodie Whittaker one that I watched all the way through. Like, that's the only season I watched like all the episodes. Actually, I don't even think it is. No, I don't think I've watched the whole season of Jodie Whittaker stuff because I don't remember watching the finale.
Yeah, I remember watching at least up to halfway through of it, and then it was around like the midpoint that I sort of stopped watching it weekly, but I kept up with it.
Yeah, me too.
And then sort of a similar thing happened with Series 12, where I watched like the first few episodes, but I fell off again, and then I tuned in for the final. Yeah. I did watch the other episodes later on, just like to be caught up, but it really was at that point where I was just like so. I mean, people can watch our previous videos to kind of get a gauge of how we started off, where we were very hopeful but very sceptical, and we sort of slowly lost our interest as it went on and continued, which is a shame, honestly.
Hopeful. Yeah, I was always hopeful, but like, I shouldn't have been.
But yeah, we're now here at the end, and we are now. Well, it's the final episode with Jodie Whittaker, The Power of the Doctor. Mm-hmm. We've both seen it. And I literally just finished watching it again, like less than 20 minutes ago, just to have a refresher. And
yeah, I feel like I need to watch it one more time, just because like to sort of soak it all in again.
Honestly, I'm still kind of trying to process my full feelings for it because it's always hard to say sometimes when what you think of. An ending or a final or the conclusion of a story point for a certain thing, depending on how you feel about it. And I guess we'll start off with what I did like, or what we liked about the episode. So, for me, I would say this is up there with Jodie's decent bunch of episodes. The few there are there. I would say that I definitely enjoyed. Well, I won't say I enjoyed because it's still plagued with a lot of Chibnall problems, but I was able to sit through this and I didn't feel
bearable. I think, yeah,
it was bearable. That's the best way to put it. It was bearable enough, but I also do think that a lot of the stuff that was bearable was stuff that wasn't prominent with Chibnall's era, and. I think no Who fan is going to be surprised. It was a lot of the stuff that was due with like the other Doctors. We got to see the classic Doctors again, some of them for the first time since they left the show.
Yeah,
and this was a surprise, although not a surprise, because the one character that after both viewings, the one character that I really felt impressed with was the Master, with Sacha Dhawan.
Oh yeah, definitely. I really love his interpretation of the Master. I think I've said this before, but yeah, like it's definitely one of the best parts of the Chibnall era is his Master.
Yeah, he's just his performance as the Master, but in just general of being a villain, is so fun. It's hard for me to kind of describe, but I when he became the Doctor and he was like getting excited, getting like very invested, and then all of a sudden he turned and he's able to like threaten Yaz, and then there's that one point where Yaz is like trying to confront him, and he's like, "I am the Doctor," and it's just and
Yeah,
he was so
I think as I was
fierce.
watching it, I was feeling bad because like I was like, oh, he's really good, but it's a shame that the things he got to work with wasn't the best material. Like, if he was the master with a different showrunner, I was like, wouldn't that have been better? And like, I just feel bad for him a little bit.
Yeah, but yeah, he was definitely a highlight in this episode for me, and in general, and for this era of Doctor Who, it's been very, very
Yeah,
weak.
yeah. It's funny you say about the master because I, I when I watched the episode as a whole, I realised that I only started enjoying myself when the master started dancing to the song Rasputin as like dressed up as Rasputin. Like that's when I started enjoying it. Because until I guess the first half an hour, I was just like not having the best. Like I wasn't really gripped by it. But yeah, like that after that moment on, I was actually enjoying myself. And I was like, oh, this is fun. This is like I like this song, so this is nice. And then it was him being the master, and that was fun. And then there was all these like, I guess callbacks and fan servicey things, and like it was fan service, but I was really like I think I've said this about something else, but I lapped it up. I really like did enjoy all the fan service. So like the doctors being there, like you said, was really really fun, and I was smiling the whole time. Like that was a really genuinely great scene. Um, like and it was just fun to watch like the seventh and eighth doctors having like an argument. Like that was really fun. Um,
Yeah,
uh, but yeah, apart from that, um, the what I don't really know what else I enjoyed. I did enjoy that. I obviously enjoyed the final sequence where she regenerated. That was really well done, and genuinely made me tear up a little bit. Like I haven't liked this Doctor's incarnation, and this era, but I feel like I said about Sacha Dhawan, I feel bad for Jodie because she could have been great if she'd have given better stuff to work with and better direction, and maybe if she had changed like some sort of acting choices, I would have enjoyed her a bit more. But when she regenerated and was saying the final lines, I genuinely was like, oh, I feel sad, and I like sort of when she said her final line of tag you're it, I was like, oh, that's a really nice line, like that's a fun last quote for the Doctor, and that made me like tear up or like get a bit emotional.
yeah. I think
um
I do believe that Jodie at this point, the first half of the episode, where it was very much just the Doctor trying to like piece together all the puzzles going on. That was very much typical Chibnall, where the dialogue was very very stilted, and at points it was very wooden, and
yeah.
the scenes just kept flowing forward. They didn't take time to breathe. That it felt like every other episode that Chibnall had done. But then, as it got to the halfway point, when it got to the Master, and then you got to see all this other stuff with the companions and the conflicts going forward, it felt like it started to be a bit more enjoyable. And I definitely feel like Chibnall, despite all his faults and stupid choices, I do generally feel like he tried doing something interesting with this episode. And
I would agree because yeah, the beginning of it felt like classic Chibnall Who, where it's just a bit stilted and bland, and like even the production I felt in the beginning, like the editing was really weird. Like, and I felt like that with the last episode, like the editing was really odd, and I don't know why that's been. But yeah, then later on it became a bit more interesting, and there were some interesting things. However, something that I did notice for the whole episode, and like you said about Chibnall trying his hardest to make a good episode, I think he tried to play it safe with this episode because it was the last one. It was like probably more people are going to tune into it, and it's he probably tried to make it good by making it so many elements of this episode were just stolen from other episodes. And
oh
like
yeah,
that can
yeah,
happen with Doctor Who. Like there can be similar plots and stuff, but literally so many things, and I can list some that are in my head. Like the opening sequence was just Mummy on the Orient Express with the flying space train. The Master changing into someone else was, is it End of Time when? Is it End of Time when the Master became everyone on Earth?
Yeah, and there was also the Doctor Who movie where he did he tried doing the exact same thing with the Doctor by stealing his body.
Wow. Yeah, well, yeah. So there's that. And then, like, when all the companions are in the TARDIS, that's Stolen Earth. When all the companions are in the TARDIS and the Doctor's flying it, they're all flying it together.
Yeah, and the sequence where Ace falls and she lands in the TARDIS, like, pretty much the same thing with River Song.
With River Song, yeah. I was going to say, when Tegan was climbing down the ladder, but that wasn't really ripped from anything. That's just a common thing in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like that. Yeah, so there was a lot of just playing it safe by just stealing other things, and I noticed it a lot. Like it wasn't pointed out to me. I was watching it. I was like, that's just this, that's just this, that's just this, and it did take me out of it a bit. It was being like, well, he's just trying to make it like the other, like what's come before.
Yeah, I do feel like that was one of the weakest points of the episode, where it was trying to, as you said, play a safer path for its last episode, because I generally think that, again, I think I read this somewhere. He explained in an interview that he wrote this episode with the intent that it probably would be the last episode of Doctor Who ever, because he wasn't sure if the show was going to be picked up again after he left. So he probably had it in his head where, okay, I've probably got to wrap everything up, but I've also got to not do anything that's going to damage the brand further, or leave it open for people to say, when's the next episode, and then they are disappointed when there isn't a next one. So we probably looked back at a lot of old episodes and thought, maybe I can have a fun twist with this, and he just probably didn't execute it the best. So we clearly see, like, oh yeah, he's just doing this from this and this and this.
Yeah, you can really tell that it was trying to be the last episode, with the what I like to call the Alcoholics Anonymous of the companions, right at the end, when they were all the companions that are still alive, basically, in a circle talking about the Doctor. That's a very sort of, the Doctor's dead, here's like a tribute sort of thing. So I guess that does make sense if like they were to end it with the Doctor actually dying, and being the last episode of Doctor Who, with like the callbacks and characters and everything. But speaking of characters, oh sorry, you go ahead and then we'll go into that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I really, those ending points with the Doctors, and then with the companions at the end, I feel like that is a storyline that should have been. I mean, if I was to envision the last ever episode of Doctor Who, I would like to think that the entire episode would be in the Doctor's head, and her basically interacting with her previous incarnations, and then just battling out whether or not to regenerate, or just trying to figure out where she is. And the whole premise of the episode would be like just discovering like what motives this incarnation to do what they do. And I feel like if it was to be end ambiguously, it would then end with like the companions having a therapy meeting where they catch up and they just talk about their adventures. I feel like that concept is such a good way to end an episode of Doctor Who, especially if it in concept was the last episode. It is just a shame, like, again, this is another thing with Chibnall's in it. It is just a shame it's from a writer and an era that is so poor, because even with those great concepts, this episode has so much other stuff in it that it's fighting for control. Because I'm not gonna lie, as much as I love that scene with the companions at the end, call me selfish, but I wanted more. I wanted the episode to keep going. Sure. I wanted to see those people interact and talk about, oh, you met the Zygons. Oh, I fought Cybermen. Oh, I nearly got sucked out into space. Oh, I was kidnapped by the Doctor when I first met him. There's so many interesting stories you can explore and tell with these characters that a lot of us haven't seen for over 50 years. I mean, they brought back Ian Chesterton, a character that I've wanted to see since 2014 when they bloody brought back Coal School. And God, do you remember that when Peter Capaldi's first season was coming out, and we all had hope that they've got to bring back William Russell because they teased that he's the headmaster in the 50th, and they're bringing back Coal School. They've got to, and then they never did.
No. To be honest though, I didn't actually give a shit about that scene because it was companions. None of the companions in it I really gave a shit about except for like Bradley Walsh, because I don't like the Chibnall companions, and I hadn't watched Classic Who, so none of those characters I was like, oh yeah, these are all the characters. I'm like, I recognise them. I'm like, oh, that's all the old companions, but I wasn't like, but this is just a me thing. I wasn't like, oh my god. I was just like, okay, next scene please, because I was like, oh, where's all the new Who companions? But like, if you think about it, the only one that could feasibly be there is Martha, because like Rose is in a parallel dimension, Donna's can't remember the Doctor, Amy's dead, Clara's in space in a TARDIS, and Bill is a puddle a lesbian puddle travelling through the galaxy. So none of the new Who companions really could have been there. Maybe Wilf, but I was just like, oh, okay.
I will say this also. A few more things that I did like about the episode. Now, again, the Master was my first. I think he was great. I think the second was, of course, the Doctors, because again, seeing past Doctors is always going to be a chill pleaser for me, because just seeing them again and interacting and just like that gave me chills when I first saw all the Doctors, especially Colin Baker and Peter Davidson and Sylvester McCoy, and
I love that Paul McGann was wearing his outfit.
Yeah,
because that's my favourite Doctor Who outfit, and I was like, yes,
yeah, and even,
please give this man a fucking series.
And even the way he like explains why, that is so the Eighth Doctor. That's the kind of thing he would do. I loved it. And I just think that it was such. I will say this. And you know what? I'll save that for the negative bit. but every scene with them was good, really good. But I think my favourite bit had to be the scene between the Seventh Doctor and Ace, because take away their history with each other. Because again, it's been a long time, but I have seen those stories, so I do know their connection and their relationship. But even if you take that away, just like treating these two as two friends who fell out, just the way that he talks about her, about how I was just trying to be there for you, just trying to teach you to just trying to help, and I feel like I failed, and she's like, you didn't fail me, you helped me become me. And he's like, he has that great analogy about all parents have to see their children fly, but that's what's the fun part about it. And again, I'm paraphrasing that terribly, but that was such a heartwarming line for me to hear, and that came from bloody Chibnall. that's what shocked me.
Yeah, well, it seems that he can write for other it seems that he can write for other Doctors. Like it's just the one he created himself is the bad one. Do you know what I mean? Like that with the episodes he's written for the other Doctors before in Russell T Davies and Moffat's eras. Like the bad thing about those episodes aren't the Doctor. The Doctor's good and it's written well. It's just the stories aren't the best in some of the cases.
Yeah.
But the characters are really good because they're characters that already exist. So I think Chibnall can excel when he's been given characters that already exist, and he knows how they act. But it's just creating his own ones for Doctor Who. It hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really good point. I've made a cool point that I've never heard before.
Yeah, it's cool.
Get hot takes on this podcast.
Also, another thing. Last two highlights for me. The music at the end. Again, we've said it before. the music in this era has been very basic. It's good, but it's just the same theme over and over again.
It's not Doctor Who. It's just sort of atmospheric, which can be good, but you don't want that for Doctor Who. I think you want like Murray Gold.
Yeah.
You want Murray Gold to do Murray Gold stuff. But I agree. The last song, I was like, oh, that's good.
The choice to use that song at that scene of the regeneration was very effective, and I feel like that's what that song probably should have just stayed as. Should have probably just been like a few moments in Doctor Who in the Jodie era during like big moments, and that scene, and I think that would have worked. And if they gave the companions, the Doctor, different variations of a theme, I think that would have made it a bit more broader and made us a bit more connective. Because again, you look at all the past themes for Doctor Who, and you can always tell whose companion's theme is, and who's that theme for, and it gets you excited when they would use those themes if they're bringing that character back. But this has just been the same theme over and over again, and it was there was a time when it was tiring for me to hear it, but in that moment I was generally like, this is nice, this is perfect, the scenery's nice, the music's swelling, and as you said, even Jodie's last words, again, as a Doctor that I'm not a fan of, I do feel like her last words are very fitting for her Doctor.
It's exactly what I thought. That is exactly what I thought. I think it's a very 13 thing to say, and I loved it, which is really nice. Like, that's the thing I was hoping for in this episode. I was hoping that I would enjoy 13 because I hadn't enjoyed it before, and I was like, I really want her to have a good last episode. Like, because I don't like the thing about when we all go on about Chibnall and everything. I don't want to not like him. I don't want to hate the episode because it's Doctor Who. It's my favourite show. Literally since I was a child, like since I could remember, it's been my favourite TV show, and I want to like it. I don't want to hate it, and that's what I was hoping for with this episode. And I think I did get that because I did feel chills, and I got emotional about this Doctor that I haven't liked up till now.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I do feel like this entire era has been held back by poor choices of decision makings and weak writing, and it really is disappointing because Jodie, again, I've said it so many times, but I will continue to say it here. Jodie is a great actress. She has proven herself as an actor. I've seen her in a few things that clearly show me that she can act, and I'm not gonna lie, she's had moments. Not a lot, but she's had moments throughout her era, notably in her first episode and in this episode, where she can definitely pull off a Doctor-esque moment or a Doctor-esque mannerism. But for the most part, she has been just saying dialogue or reacting funny, reacting goofy, reacting solemn, but not in a very investing way. A lot of the times, it just felt like she was just going through the scenes. I totally agree. And again, I don't know how accurate this is, but I actually was listening to the David Tennant podcast like today while I was walking in from work, and I watched the episode, of course, where he talked about Jodie. We talked with Jodie, sorry. And in that podcast, I think she mentions that, before Doctor Who, I hadn't had a role that required so much dialogue before. So I do wonder if maybe that was a factor as to why she, at points, has felt very stilted or very wooden in her performance, because she's not used to saying so many lines to make it feel believable that she's saying them. Because again, even in this episode, there are moments where she's just saying things, like, to explain to the audience that what that big ball of energy is. And it's like, she's saying it while they've got sound effects in the background, so you're always trying to strain your ears to say what she's saying, even though she's just...
Yeah, I had the same thought when she was talking about the big thing. I'm like, I don't care. Like, we don't need to know. But like that, it's a two-way thing, because it's like her delivery and her thing is like, yeah, okay, not great. But then also the dialogue is like, we don't need to have this dialogue. Doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. I thought that was a weird part of the story, that random new ball of light thing.
Yeah, just a plot device at the end of the day, just to get the Doctor to that point, honestly.
To die. Yeah, that killed the Doctor, didn't it? That was funny. When I was watching it, I was like, wow, she got killed by a big beam of light. Interesting.
And I guess my last highlight of what I did like for the episode I really liked that they did not continue the timeless child arc. They still acknowledged it, but they
Sure.
made I feel like they deliberately went out of their way to not make it a big deal, because this is, if I'm honest, this story feels more like an aftermath rather than a continuation slash conclusion. Or an epilogue, if a better way of saying it, because it's more
Yeah.
about just the Master continuing the Master's story of getting revenge against the Doctor. Which, again, if you take away those few lines of dialogue where he says about how, you've been through forced regenerations before, maybe they've done it to you multiple times, take away those few bits of dialogue, and if you take away Joe Martin's cameo near the end, this could almost be like any of the other classic Doctor Who stories where it's just the Master trying to kill the Doctor because, reasons.
Mm.
So, I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad they did this. I'm glad Chibnall didn't go out of his way to put himself in a corner and break the law further. Because what he's done so far is, I stand by, already bad, very bad. And yeah, I'm glad that he's at least, again, intentional or not, he's left it in a place where there is still hope that they can possibly, at this point, either go two paths, which is either retcon it in the next era with the next Doctor, or in the
I hope so.
60th,
Yeah.
or they'll just ignore it completely, and maybe there's a part of me
Yeah.
that can accept that or come to accept that. And we just, like, hopefully, and future
Yeah.
seasons will just acknowledge that you're a Time Lord, you're from Gallifrey, so and so, because again,
Yeah.
I know there are people out there who are okay with this arc, this development, but I'm of strong belief that I think the majority don't like this arc, and I thoroughly hate this arc just because of how it just recontextualizes who and everything that's happened about it, and the consequences that have happened because of it that feel like they haven't even been resolved. Again, have we figured out yet if the universe has been restored after Flux? Because I, I,
It seems to have be. It seems to,
yeah, yeah,
I don't think. I think they were supposed to, like, the end of it was like, oh yeah, she saved everything and everything's fine again. That's how I took it
yeah.
anyway.
Well, I mean, what about you? What are your thoughts on them not really continuing the timeless child?
Yeah, it's annoying because I really fucking hate it. Um, it does like completely misunderstand the Doctor and the show, and it makes her like the center of him now. I guess the Doctor, them. It makes them the biggest thing in the universe and the most important Time Lord and all this shit. And it's like, no, that's not what the Doctor is. The Doctor's a renegade Time Lord. It's not. They're not the most important. They're just one that didn't want to do Time Lord stuff anymore and did their own thing. So I hope, I do hope that there's, yeah, those two options. They're sort of, I guess, win-win, because it's like if we don't talk about it, we just forget it, and maybe it will just be like subtly retconned, like when you just don't, like, you can then change the law going forward, or yeah, a full-on retcon would be good. Maybe they could do it in the 60th, because they ended this episode with David Tennant being the Doctor again, and it's like, what? How did that happen? Maybe Neil Patrick Harris's character invented Flux and was messing with the Doctor's time, or not Flux, Timeless Child, and like was messing with the Doctor's past incarnations and whatever. That's why, I don't know. We'll see. See if Oscar Davis can pull anything off like that. But in this episode, it's a weird double edged sword, because I don't like the Timeless Child, but I fucking love Jo Martin as the Doctor. And when she turned up, like walking through the doors, I was like, yes! Genuinely, I like screamed like when she turned up, because I really fucking love like that incarnation. And I like the same with Paul McGann. I really hope she gets a series. I don't think it's going to happen, but she's a really good Doctor.
Yeah, for the few seconds she had, I'm glad they at least got to bring her back and acknowledge her in a quick bit.
Yeah,
I will say though, again, it will be a mystery for a long time for me to fully understand or even grasp why they thought this was a good decision to make. And I'm
yeah,
curious if Chibnall will ever come forward in the future and try and explain his reasons, or maybe even come to apologise. I mean, I doubt it. You never know. Again, this is in the entertainment business, and I feel like they've got to, in some form, keep their reputation clear in some form. And who knows? Maybe he might go down the same path as D&D, where he continues to do stuff, but we're mostly just gonna forget about him because he's the guy who made the worst choice decisions for Doctor Who.
Messed up Doctor Who.
Or he might end up bouncing back. He might make some good stuff, and maybe that will give him the confidence to say, yeah, my time with Doctor Who wasn't the best. I clearly made some poor choices, but I've learned from them, and who knows? Maybe there's a future somewhere out there where he might be able to come back as a guest writer, and maybe he'll be able to wow us. I mean, again, we know it's going to be a long ways off. No. Next year's the 60th, but who's to say in the 70th anniversary year, 10 years from now, or 11 years technically, who's to say that he might not get asked to come back and contribute for an episode in a future season, and he gets to reunite with Jodie, and he manages to pull off a very good episode. One off maybe, but again, stranger things have happened, and it's kind of funny. Reflecting back
now.
on Sorry. What did you say?
Sorry? Yeah, you said Stranger Things had happened, and I said they're on season 5 right now. Never mind, it's a bad joke.
Okay. I got it. Okay, took me a second.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, I was saying,
Sorry, I've messed you up. Chibnall coming back to Doctor Who. Stranger Things have happened.
Yeah, damn it, I lost the train now.
Sorry.
Okay. But yeah, I guess
Sorry.
For a wrap up on the good stuff, I would say this is definitely a better episode in 13's roster of episodes for Who. But I'll just quickly point out a few of my dislikes for the episode. Okay, first one. For the opening scene, they should not have gone crazy with the VFX, because I feel like that entire sequence with the train, I feel like it would have worked better if it was just the blackness of the stars, or of space, and you have the stars. I feel like having that few seconds of Dan almost get shot and always get flown into the atmosphere would have maybe been a bit more effective if they cut out the music, and it just was Yaz holding his leg, and you just focus on him reacting to like the blackness of the stars, and it's like, oh, is this a tense moment where he could like die? Instead, they've got this music blaring everywhere. You've got this bright colours going right in your face, and you've got that brief shot of Dan just like looking wide-eyed, and it's like, I probably should be feeling a bit concerned, but at the same time, I'm like, there's so much going on, there's so much happening at the screen. I'm like, okay, just move on. You're hurting my eyes. I'm not really getting the sense
and then like his helmet got exploded.
Yeah, I guess. Point one, I feel like that first scene was just like, again, continued problem with Chibnall era. It's just a lot's happened in a quick space of time that really failed for me to capture what could have been a very compelling moment, if I'm honest.
Yeah, my girlfriend was telling me that when because we were watching it at the same time, and she was texting me, she was like, bloody hell, you fake shit. I'm like, yeah, but that's what Doctor Who is, isn't it? Bad effects and stuff. So I can get past that. But yeah, it was just a fucking barrage of sensory overload.
Yeah, the Doctor Who has had its high points with CG and effects, but at its core, it's the story and the characters and how it's directed and shown on screen that can really make or break it. And in Chibnall's case, this era is just... God, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm losing my voice as I continue. But yeah, as this era has shown, a lot of it has been sometimes mixed to sometimes downright shit. I mean, another example I can give here is that there's a quick scene where it focuses on the Doctor and the team, like on the top of the train, and they say, look out, or something, and they're trying to point to the Cybermen, and the camera then zooms outwards to show the Cybermen, and it's just like a faraway distance shot where it's like, if you didn't know the Cybermen were already the Cybermen, you'd have to go, okay, what aliens are they? Because they're very tiny, and I can't exactly see what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. what is that? Yeah, but also, like, I thought there was too much banter happening because like they were like it was a really cool scene up to them because it was like, oh shit, there's these people on this train and the Cybermen are here and they're killing people. Oh my god, the Doctor's here, and she put the shot of the ladder like going from the TARDIS out onto the thing. I was like, wow, that was really cool. And then they sort of got on and they were just sort of bantering and talking and talking and talking and talking. And then like they got down and they were just still bantering. And I'm like, guys, this is like fucking urgent. People are actually dying. You're here to save them. And you're just joking. And you're like, oh yeah, my joke was better than your joke. And I was like, shut up. Stop. Not every sentence has to have a joke in it. I find the same way with Marvel stuff. Like, not everything has to be a joke.
Yeah, again, the problem with this era, they haven't really established the characters well. So when they're trying to do dialogue, certain scenes feel like they're too forced or unnecessary, and make the characters come across as more unlikable. I mean, honestly, when I watched the first episode for the first time, when Dan says goodbye to Yaz and the Doctor, and she basically, in their own bantering way, says goodbye to each other, and he says, "I'll call you," and she says, "I'll ghost you." I generally took that first scene as like, "You bitch!" Yeah. It's like he's probably saying goodbye to you for the rest of his life. Yeah. And you're like, I won't respond to your calls. And it's like,
yeah, I thought, I was like, that's just not funny. Like, yeah. That's not a funny
Second
joke.
viewing, I was a bit more like, okay, fine, because again, how many times have you said a similar thing to your friends when you like don't mean it, ill intent, and that banter can work. But the problem is you have to really feel and understand the characters. And again, Dan, we've only had him for a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Yaz, again, she's had 3 seasons and like 3 episodes under her belt now. But again, they never did a good job establishing or making, at least us and I like to think a majority of other people care about her character. So, yeah, a lot of it did feel flat and at points very, very frustrating.
I didn't mind Yaz in this episode, to be honest. Like, she's been really bland up till now, but like in this one I was like, yeah, I can get on board her as a companion, but it feels like this is like her first episode. Do you know what I mean? Like her being so like boring and like there's no character up until now. It feels like this is her first episode because now she's sort of becoming interesting, and this is the last one she's in. I think this whole like episode feels a bit like their first attempt again, or like they're sort of like as if everything now has been like practice, and this is now Doctor Who, and I'm like, if they'd have started with this sort of trajectory as this team, it might have been a good season because things got better in this episode, like a lot of stuff that we've not like characterization and stuff, and like the Doctor and everything. It feels like this could have been the beginning, but this is like the last episode, and it just feels like such a shame. In a way, like in a way, it's a shame. In the other way, it's like thank God it's over. We can go to RTD.
I do have a feeling, and then again, this might change. Again, I might actually feel different in the future, but I have a sneaking feeling that the reason why, at least I cared a bit more about Yaz in this episode, was because that was the genuine, emotion of the actors. Saying their goodbyes, like delivering their moments of levity or like their moments of emotional baggage to us. Because before, again, they're just actors doing their job, trying to make the dialogue sound interesting or investing, and it just didn't work. But here, that ending scene particularly, when they're saying goodbye on top of the TARDIS and the Doctor gives her a speech, which is honestly very moving, but it's also clearly just Jodie. She's just talking about herself and her experience with working on Doctor Who, and it's the same with Yaz, because to them, we talked about this, I think, before on the previous episode, but they have gone on quite an adventure. They went to so many countries and so many places, and they've met so many people that they're going to be friends with for years to come working on Doctor Who. But for us, we only saw the corporatized, very poorly done, very poorly executed show that came out of them while they were doing those great adventures. So to us, we feel very detached at points because we didn't get to see the fun stuff. We didn't get to see the good stuff. Whereas with them, they've had such a good time. They were generally like emotional. So I feel like that probably came across on screen where they were pouring their heart out, and the crew would just happen to be recording at the same time. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a better excuse, but I guess that's probably why I feel like why it works so well. It's more bearable. The characters are more bearable in this episode because they were generally putting their heart into it, and it did come across.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, but yeah, that's probably why it was good now.
Yeah.
Well,
another
anyway.
another nitpick here. That child actor at the beginning, she did not react.
Fucking hell, yeah. No. What is it with kids in this show not fucking reacting to shit? But I mean, thing is though, this one, I thought that, but this one makes more sense. The Doctor child that I don't believe is the fucking Doctor. The Doctor child from the Timeless Child was the Doctor and was a real like person, not reacting. This is like a hologram, just like pretending to be something it's not. So fair enough that it's not reacting. I think just because it's not actually a child, it's just a big ball of light. So maybe that doesn't know what emotions are.
It was meant to be like an alien, wasn't it? A living creature. So I'll say this: it's just
Yeah.
It does mean a lot when you could just have an actor just pull off a shocked expression or a concerned expression. That makes all the difference in the world with an audience, empathizing with an audience. And again, at the end of the day, these are kids. We've talked about this before on previous episodes. We're of the Whittaker era where they have a prominent child actor involved in the plot. The notable one, of course, is always going to be the Timeless Child episode with that bloody Timeless Child kid that just like didn't react to falling off a bloody cliff. And there was that one girl in like the Angel episode too that was like very stilted at points. But yeah, the Timeless Child kid like takes the cake, and this child actor, I do buy your reasoning.
Yeah.
But again, I do also feel like, again, just do your job. And I'm not talking to the actress here. I hope you go far if you're intended to become an actress, go for it. But for all those people who were tasked with making her do her best performance, shame on you, because if you can't get a simple shocked reaction out of an actor, you failed. and again, this isn't giving her a big line or a big speech or just like doing anything that's probably going to be a lot. But again, I can't say from experience. I'm not an actor, but it just says a lot sometimes when you just give them just have them stand there and expect us to say, oh, they're a kid. We should care.
Yeah, that's literally what it was saying though. Like, that's like the point of the hologram, isn't it? This is a kid. You should care.
Yeah.
Try and protect this kid.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, okay, I'll rush through the last few of these. The Doctor continues to dismiss her companions, not acknowledging that Dan always died. She just continues on with the mission and doesn't even try to check on Dan or ask if he's alright. Again, they've done this a lot with Jodie's era, so I'm just like, more of this. Again, previous Doctors, or at the very least, I'd like to think a better version of Jodie would have immediately gone to Dan and said, are you alright? But she just didn't in that episode, and that again, as we mentioned earlier, because we haven't really felt invested with these characters, those brief moments that you might just pass off or might feel like it's better executed a different way, as is, it just feels like you're just being unnecessarily unkind, unlikable, and we're not liking you more because of that. And yeah, and Vinder, my next point, Vinder, I do not think he needed to be in this episode.
Genuinely forgot he was in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, he should have been Jack. If they were going to bring anyone back, they should have brought Jack at this point.
I was literally about to say that. Yeah, it could have been Jack, because it could have been a quick cameo thing towards the end. He was just in it for... Yeah, he didn't need to be in it. But I think it felt like it was just trying to get like a big team back for like a last episode.
Yeah, and I guess the last two, the Dalek betraying its race to aid the Doctor. Again, cool concept, but immediately squandered in an episode that it doesn't give much focus to. another traditional thing with Chibnall.
Yeah, and isn't that a plot point already? I'm pretty sure. Not that maybe that is specifics, but a Dalek bit going against the Daleks. I'm pretty sure that's a thing already. That's why, like I was saying, like this episode just takes lots of things from old episodes, and I'm pretty sure that's almost a plot in something.
They have done that in past 2 episodes before, but again, off the top of my memory, they have yet to do a proper episode, at least in New Who, where a Dalek is genuinely like rebelling against its race. Because there was that one episode with Capaldi where they had a Dalek turning on against the Daleks because of a malfunction, and then the Doctor like reset that malfunction at the end.
Yeah,
But in this episode's case, at least, it was genuinely a Dalek who turned against its race. So I feel like that could have been an episode unto itself, and it was squandered just so they could use it as a stepping stone for the main plot to happen in this episode. So again, more squandered potential.
yeah. I felt like this was quite a crowded episode.
And the last bit, that scene where Ace just knows where there's two guns hidden under the floor, and I do like a lot of classic Who, but I'm not an expert in certain eras, and in this case with Tegan Travanka, I remember watching a lot of those stories when I was younger, enjoy them, but I've got in my head at the moment, at least, that she wasn't the kind of companion who was like very gun heavy. I do have this memory that she did at one point wield a gun against a Cyberman, but she was, again, I might be misremembering this, but she was very like, she wasn't a violent person. She didn't go out of her way to become an action hero. She was pretty much like, I think actually she left the Doctor because of all the violence that she saw in her final episode. So I do feel like this scene of her just like picking up a gun with Ace and shooting with alongside her was very out of character, maybe. And maybe I'm just misremembering. Yeah, I think Ace is the only one I could buy wielding a gun because her character always was like very like she carried around explosives
Yeah,
in her stories, and she had that baseball bat that she used a lot against the Daleks in the past too. So I could buy her wielding a gun.
Yeah, I found the baseball bit a bit like that was obviously fan service because that's like the famous thing that Ace did was like beat up a Dalek with a baseball bat, and like I thought it was going to be like a play on like a subversion of expectations because like what happened before in the 80s was she beat up a Dalek and actually fucking died because she beat up a baseball bat, I think. But in this, it's like I thought it was going to be straight up. She smacks it over the head and it breaks instantly, or something bad happens. But like she hits it and it explodes. Like oh my, you've seen the Dalek. These new Daleks anyway are bulletproof and like explosion proof and all this all these things. So she hits it with a bat and it explodes. Like what? Why? Why was that a thing? I thought it was going to be like she does it and it's like oh it's a callback to this, but then it goes horribly wrong. But it didn't. It worked again.
I generally do think they didn't explain that well because in Classic Who it's explained that, and again I'm remembering this from years ago, so forgive me if I get a bit wrong, but that bat was enhanced by the Doctor in some form, so it was like very durable against like I think meant to be Dalek casing, which is why it has those sparks. If you watch the old clips, it has sparks hitting it, and there's a bit of an explosion when Ace uses the bat against the Dalek. So I feel like they were just like doing that again, but they clearly didn't explain it well. I mean, they should have probably like had a bit of dialogue where he said, "James, what's that bat made of?" And she like gives a throwaway line of like, "Oh, it's so and so." So they could have done that, but they didn't. So in your case, or anyone who doesn't even know who Ace is, they probably just thought, "How did you blow up a Dalek with a bat?"
Yeah. But yeah, why the fuck was Bradley Walsh there? Why was Graham there? Because I genuinely there's so much of this episode that I just didn't understand what was happening. Like the volcanoes, I was like, what? Like at one point, I was like, what is the Doctor trying to save things from? Like what is happening? Like a lot of this episode, because it was just so crammed, I was like, what is going on?
Because in his last episode, they made it a point that he wanted to continue helping people, I think. So the Doctor gives him and Ryan psychic paper and says, "Oh, you continue to help people on Earth. The psychic paper will help you get through some tight situations." And I guess this scene was meant to like show like the culmination of that, where he's still going around stopping alien threats, kind of like how Sarah Jane did. So, yeah, I'll give them this. I like to. They didn't confirm it in this episode, but we guessed it. I think we guessed it. I think we might have talked about it in a previous episode. But we predicted, or at least we talked about it, and I guessed that maybe this episode would end with Graham and Dan just walking off into the distance together, and they'd become a bit of a duo going across Earth, like becoming like the modern day Jago and Lightfoot from classic Doctor Who, which I think would have been cool. And they don't do that. They just like clearly establish they're just going to a meeting together. But who knows? Maybe that's a thing they'll retcon in like Big Finish. But yeah, gotta say, that's most of my likes and dislikes. I guess here's for the wrap up then. So, in your opinion, mate, how would you say you overall rate this episode and the ending?
The ending was good because like we talked about it. I thought it was a really perfect cut, like line. It looked great. It felt great. I got emotional, all that sort of stuff. So the ending was good. Episode. There was some real gems in this one. Genuinely, like, had me feeling great about Doctor Who, which is really nice. But overall, I just think it was like more Chibnall stuff where it was too much stuff was going on, too many missed potentials, too like weird character dialogue. Oh yeah, fucking just quickly, Tegan. I thought the actor for Tegan fucking awful. Like. I'm sure she was good when she was on before, but she felt so weird now. I guess she hadn't been acting because she was just. It was. I thought it was terrible. That was just aside. But yeah, the episode. It was what you'd probably expect for a Chibnall finale. Too much going on. But there was some good things I enjoyed about it, which is I can't say that for many other Chibnall episodes. So I enjoyed those bits, but I need to watch it again one more time just to like actually pay attention to everything. But I probably wouldn't again after that.
Yeah, for me, again, it's something I'm still trying to honestly process. But I would say, for an episode that was meant to end the era of a Doctor that was very, I'd say, it being generous here, I'd say divisive. And if I'm being bluntly honest, in my opinion, right now, an era that's been very bad, very detrimental to the brand as a whole, and to the actors' futures. Because I hope for the best, but again, I have no idea what could happen with a lot of these actors going forward. Because again, I like to think that the entertainment business is slowly starting to see the fallbacks to what's happening with all these brands because they're messing around with them in the worst ways. So hopefully when things do get on a better track, they will look back on these brands and see where they went wrong. And again, that's a good thing, but that will also hold repercussions for a lot of the people involved. So we have no idea how everyone else is going to fare going forward. But I do hope they can continue with good things for themselves. Because I think a lot of them are wasted. But sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, so I'll go back to my main point. I will say, like, for an episode that was meant to close out an era, I feel like it was below okay. Because it's still Chibnall's Doctor Who. It's still got all the problems that we've been complaining about since his first season. And it's still part of a big tapestry that Chibnall, like, clearly, like, didn't know what to do half the time. Other times he was, like, going around it in a way that just wasn't fun for the fans to enjoy. And I guess overall it just felt very unnecessary. But though it has its moments that generally tried, it had a lot of the fan service moments definitely were a boost of fun for us. And you can chalk that up to just fan service. And maybe that's true. Again, I might look back at this episode next year and think, yeah, this episode wasn't good compared to just those few gold nuggets that make you reflect on the better days. But I've got to give them props. They do definitely have their moments of trying. And I do have to commend Jodie that at least she went in trying to do her best with what she could do. So, overall, I'd say The Power of the Doctor is one of Jodie Whittaker's better episodes of Doctor Who. it's not good, but it's on par with like I would say a few of the episodes in Flux and maybe a few good that stand out in 11 and 12. But because there's some interesting stuff happening that keep and cool concepts that keep you somewhat interested and occasionally touched. You feel touched by a good bit of dialogue here or an interaction there or a delivery here, but it's still held back by poor writing and just in general poor. I want to say poor management, but just in general, I just feel like the writing is the main villain here at the end of the day, and I'm sorry, but it all rests on Chibnall. It was his decision to make a lot of these choices, and again, if it was the studio, yeah, their fault too. But yeah, these things do come from somewhere, and I feel like whoever came forward was a good idea to do the Timeless Child, to do all of the stuff they did with the Doctor and the companions, and just everything that just we've complained about for the last 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, I do feel like it's contributed in this episode being okay for me. And yeah, that's it for me. Yeah, there's not really much for me to add. And if you can't tell already, my voice is starting to go a bit sore. I apologise.
No, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just one. It's all right. It's just one of those episodes that's just like, yeah, I completely agree. It's like there's some bits that are good, but there's just the rest of it. It's just probably it's just like what I said before. I'm probably not going to watch it again, for like a third time, because with a lot of other Doctors, I do watch their episodes over and over and over again. But I wouldn't watch this probably again just because it's, frankly, there's a lot of it that's just a bit. It's a bit boring, and I just wasn't paying attention, just because I didn't feel like it grabbed me.
Yeah, I feel like this is the kind of episode where you will only just watch it for that ending, as opposed to previous Doctors where you will watch the full episode to enjoy the full adventure, the final adventure. For this one, I generally feel like I'll watch this for the last 10 minutes of the Doctor's companions, the Doctor having her lovely speech on the ship, on the roof of the ship, and regenerating on that very nice rock cliff face, and turning into the exciting new incarnation that is played by David Tennant, which is going to be very exciting.
Yes, very good. I thought it was weird that his clothes regenerated too.
I'm not going to lie, that is something I want to talk about, but that is something we are going to save for a future episode.
Really? We're not going to talk about it in this one? Oh, okay.
I feel like that is a whole can of worms that we are going to have a lot of fun poking in a future episode down the line.
Oh, okay.
I apologise for your disappointment.
That's alright.
But yeah, anything you want to say before we close out, mate?
No. I enjoyed seeing the old Doctors and Joe Martin and the Master, but that's really it. As an episode as a whole, it wasn't the best. But I'm just excited to see what comes in the future now.
Cool. And you want to say anything regarding Jodie before we close out?
Yeah, she had a run. She was the Doctor. There you go. She had some times where, like you said, from her first episode, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a Doctor, but then it sort of she just wasn't really, and I just felt it was a bit of a shame that she had such a bad showrunner to work with. I'm sure if she came in a future episode that was like written by someone else, and maybe they slightly tweaked her character, that she'd be really good, because she is a good actor. It's just some of the choices she's done has been odd, but it is sad that she's gone. But like I said, I'm just excited for the future now.
I agree. Yeah, Jodie's going to be an interesting one looking back on in the future, and I do agree with what you talked about before. Once I feel like she probably will become this generation's Colin Baker, and maybe we'll look back on her differently if when she gets like big finish roles and they get to expand on her in better ways compared to how she was on screen. But yeah, I gotta say, it was an interesting journey to say the least. Not fun. At points, very heartbreaking in the worst kind of way. Not the most emotional. Not in the emotional investing kind of way.
Yeah.
But let's hope for a better future because there's a lot of promise, and that is something we will further talk about at some point. But until then, yeah. Farewell, 13. Farewell, Jodie. And yeah, let's see what comes next for the Doctor.